this is Jeanine Taylor, and we're back here again, and I have a wonderful treat for you. First, I want to introduce you to a dear, dear friend of mine and fellow folk art lover and collector, Charley Williams. And he has generously loaned his work here to Crealde School of Art here in Winter Park for a very special show. And Charley, the name of it?
Sure, Jeanine, thank you. It's Power, Myth, and Memory. And the context for this show is we've got artist group from Haiti, Africa, and 9 southern states, folk artists. With the earliest artist born in 1886, Clementine Hunter from Louisiana. Again, she grew up experiencing, aftermath of the Civil War, Reconstruction, life in Louisiana. So we start here date-wise, and then we move over here to a new artist, such as LaVon Williams, a carver, who is active today in producing some great work, one of our new folk artists on the scene. Actually spent quite a bit of time here in Central Florida in Sanford, and has done some amazing carving work. So in between, we have 83 artists, all with different stories to tell. In the current time frame, many of us, Kristen Condon from UCF was our curator for this show. Kristen and I and Jeanine are working on a history project, research project of the Ocoee voting massacre in 1920. Which highlights the inequalities in the whole American South and beyond when it came to equality, voting, fair treatment. And so there's stories here that kind of weave into this show, Power, Myth, and Memory.
It's been wonderful to tie all this together. Okay, where would you like to go? How about a ruby? Want to talk about a ruby?
Well, I think everyone in Central Florida, certainly who's been to Jeanine's gallery, knows Ruby. And from Bealsville, Plant City, near Lakeland, Florida, lives on a farm right off of State Road 60.
Right.
And got her start when she was drawing signs to help draw attention to her produce. And I know Jeanine knows the evolution, how she eventually moved into telling her stories. So this is one, and every time you buy a Ruby piece, if you're lucky to talk to Jeanine or Ruby, what's the story behind it? And the story behind this one is called The Singing Tree. At least as she told it to me, was that when she was out in the field with her cows doing her farming, she would often sing to the trees, which is a great way to relax. And as she said, steal away and hear the voice. A lot of her sayings come from hymns and church songs. So this is The Singing Tree, and she's done a great job. And we've got another piece across the hall from Ruby, which is, maybe we'll end there.
Yes, that would be good.
So everyone should have a Ruby Williams, let me just say.
Absolutely, and one of our latest is called It Costs to Hate, and that's so appropriate for our times right now. So we've got those in the gallery too, in the form of a t-shirt, and more on the way. Which way do you want to go, Charley?
Well, part of the fun of having a collection up and on the walls is that you get to see the context. In a gallery like this, the relationships, it's kind of like a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth because there's so many interesting tie-ins. And I want to start maybe by mentioning Purvis Young over here, who's another Florida artist, grew up and lived in Overtown in Miami. This one is a fun piece. Actually, this was acquired when Jeanine and I were on a trip. We actually went over to New Orleans and met the collector who had purchased this a while back with Purvis. Unusual piece because it's got the door handle here. But it's called A Funeral. And for those of you who enjoy music and remember the Talking Heads and their album Stop Making Sense, David Byrne with that group just used Purvis, a painting by Purvis, on the cover of his most recent album called American Utopia. And then, of course, they were on the show, on the road with that show, and it was on Broadway up until January. But that's a wonderful accolade for the artist. And as you know, as Bailey pointed out, David Byrne and Stop Making Sense used an earlier painting by Howard Finster as one of their album covers. So it's fun to see the context and his appreciation for folk art. But the reason I bounced over here is Jonathan Demme was the director who filmed Stop Making Sense. And the connection with Purvis is that, the connection with art is that Jonathan Demme is a huge collector of Haitian art. And over here we have two pieces by Roy David Annecy from Haiti, who was highlighted in the book Islands on Fire, which was a 1994 catalog, highlighting a lot of the Haitian artwork that is also in this show, and just kind of picks up on that power, myth, and memory theme. And this one on the top called Spirit of the Rainforest is my particular favorite. It's from 1994, before we were all engaged in climate change, but you have the spirit of the rainforest kind of being crucified on the top and his dog crying at the bottom in different responses from the spirits there, but it's a precursor to climate change, and it's one of my favorite pieces in the whole collection. This is a large format piece from New Orleans artist Ransom McCormick. It's titled Moved by the Word. We love this piece because it captures the spirit of the Black church and the energy in so many ways. I haven't counted the number of figures in this piece. I'm going to do it, but you can just watch the energy moving through here. Ransom is still painting. He's living in the Gentilly section of New Orleans. I just talked to him for the first time by phone because we didn't know too much about him. And just as a side, he got his inspiration for this piece watching the Blues Brothers movie, the first version, when James Brown was in a preacher role in the church. So he captured that energy very well. And we look forward to seeing more from him as he continues to produce. So this is a nice surprise.
Mm-hmm. And directly under, yesterday we did a focus on Aileen Harris from Gainesville, and I mentioned that she was distantly related to this artist, Jesse Aaron. And it's a beautiful, just a primitive sculpture. Believe he used spoons and kitchen knives, if I'm not mistaken. But that is splendid.
Mm-hmm. Mary T. Smith from Hazelhurst, Mississippi, daughter of a sharecropper, but has now risen to be a premier component for any big folk art show. She painted on tin and found objects and actually displayed these in her yard, and passersby would come by and meet her and possibly purchase. So we've got tin here, we've got wood here. A lot of times she would profile her neighbors and friends and other community members. One of my favorite artists as well, just always fun, kind of things reduced down to just kind of essence. Mm-hmm. And we've got another piece over in, this show is divided into two venues, so that we've got another piece over at Hannibal Square. Mm-hmm. But just always interested in what she's conceiving and the story she's telling. So in this one, the caption is "Lord save me" right here. So with hands upraised, and also in this one, which is darker, a little tougher to see, but also hands raised. Just always fun to see her in action, so to speak.
When I got here earlier, Charlie, I noticed the hands raised, and then I looked around at the whole show, and there's a lot of hand raising in these subjects, so that's very interesting. Mm-hmm.
I'm looking over here. Gertrude Morgan is somebody who's in this show. Sister Gertrude Morgan, another New Orleans artist. And over here in the corner, we're going to walk back. This piece on the top, which is from 1965, called Hurricane Betsy. And most of us in Florida think of, Hurricane Andrew, and certainly in Louisiana it was Hurricane Katrina. But Hurricane Betsy in 1965 holds the record of being the second most violent storm at the stage of when it actually hit shore. So this is the Ninth Ward where Sister Gertrude Morgan lived, and she was flooded. She lost her home, and this is her story of that horrible incident back in 1965. But she continued to paint and relocated. And we have another piece of hers over here. And this is kind of a fun story when it comes to collecting. This piece is called More Than a Half Century of Service on the top. It's geared to honoring our veterans. And the New Orleans Museum of Art produced a catalog on a huge show they had a while back called Tools of Her Ministry. And if you'll look on the cover piece that they selected, which is a black and white photo of her booth at Jazz Fest, which was there from 70 to 74, you'll notice right here we have our painting, which was part of her display, and now we have it on the wall. So it's a great little piece of history. Gives me some reference as to the date of it and maybe who, the provenance that kind of followed it. Over here on the wall, we have another Gertrude Morgan piece. Well, we have two pieces. Well, we have three pieces. We have...
this is magnificent.
We have New Jerusalem, which was one of her themes, which she recreated over and over. You'll see her in the bottom right, and then her vision of, as she would say, New World in my view. And she often would stand at what used to be Preservation Hall. It used to be an art studio in New Orleans down in the French Quarter. And she had a white megaphone, and she was dressed all in white, and would talk to the sinners in the French Quarter about ways they could change their ways. So the other one we've got here is a little piece. It's actually crafted on styrofoam plate, because she would work a lot with found objects as well. This one is called God Rules Where He Pleases. And one of the fun things about collecting art and looking at pieces, and I'm going to take this off the wall because I can, is looking at the back. And on the back, this is wonderful because it has a picture of Sister Gertrude Morgan standing in her doorway. You'll get a chance to see her. And sometimes there's more information on the back. So, the fun of folk art is really seeing what's on the back. Sometimes it's dated, sometimes there's a statement. This is a beautiful piece. And then on the top, we have a poem. At some point, Gertrude Morgan received a message that she would, so that she decided she wouldn't paint anymore. Instead, she would be writing poetry. And so we have a piece of hers called The Path He Trod in Her Handwriting, which is a beautiful little poem. And it's great to see a picture of her hand. Across the way, I mentioned Preservation Hall in the French Quarter. We have a rendition of Preservation Hall by Dr. Ruth Mae McCraney from Texas. And she, again, captures a lot of energy, very vivid. Her work is just fun. It's very kinetic, it jumps. But it's fun to have this piece in the show. We just have one by her in the show to kind of highlight Preservation Hall. Of course, Gertrude Morgan, when it was an art gallery, would be standing at this same location, preaching the word. We mentioned Mary T. Smith earlier. Here's another one of her pieces. Very, very colorful, fun use of space. And again, this one I acquired on a trip to New Orleans with Jeanine from a collector who was collecting many of these same artists. So that was a pleasure to be able to to come across this one. And then under the memory sign here, we have Jimmy Lee Sudduth. Everyone knows Jimmy Lee.
This is a fabulous piece.
And it's intriguing because I think, as everyone knows the story, he painted with mud and berries and juice. He would go down to the river actually to get his mud. This one is Boar with Snake and dates from probably late 70s to early 80s, large format. He signed it on the top, and you can see the texture with the mud and the different components he used. Really fascinating. And of course, Jeanine's been to Kentuck, and he, in his later years, would display his works up there. I'm sure you have a Jimmy Lee story.
Oh, many of them. But this is interesting. I never have seen him use glitter. I'm sure there's other pieces out there with glitter, but this is the first time I've seen it. And I do know that he would take a bunch of grass in his hand and he would rub it on the board to make the green. And so that's how he did that. It's amazing. And then usually 2 fingers. But that is an excellent, excellent piece.
Well, it's fun to have it here right under the memory sign that kind of anchors this whole wall. We have another little piece in the corner where we may walk over to that because you can actually see the berry juice, bright red, kind of purple.
Yes.
And
yeah, let's do that because I just saw that one.
It's hiding back here.
And on the way over, here's It Costs to Hate, with is another ruby.
Yeah. So let's see. This Jimmy Lee is really fun. It's called just 4 figures with a building. But you can see the purple, which was probably berry juice, probably some house paint, plants, very stylized, and it's interesting. It's got a little bit of glitter on this one as well. But I love the color on this one, and the fact that you can see the way he just kind of worked with what he had at hand. The story was his mother was kind of a conjurer or medicine woman, and she would go in the woods to get herbs and medicines and maybe sit him by a tree, and he was playing around with putting something on the bark of the tree using paint, maybe not paint, but mud. And he was surprised when he came back the next day that it was still there. So that kind of prompted him, I think, to start experimenting.
That particular mud was under a cane grinding, where they had ground their cane and then moved on. And so there was cane syrup in that mud. And that's how he realized, that, well, this is going to work. It'll stick to the board, because previously it would wash off.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Takes a village.
Right here we have, this is an interesting story. This is Hawkins Baldwin, who lived in Memphis. He was blind, and he worked with, this one's a hubcap. This is kind of a big pot, but he would make sculptures out of these and put them in his garden as scarecrows to kind of protect the garden, and then he would kept a lot of this under his house. But very interesting, just to see what he used to kind of construct these scarecrows, as we say.
I wonder if we could talk about this Bones Charley, because that's amazing too. It looks like he highlighted his bones. And his story is that he worked in a marble factory, and one time a load of marble fell on his legs and crippled him for life. And so I just noticed that, and I thought, isn't that interesting, the skeletal frame in there. Maybe not.
Well, this piece came from the Cargo collection in Alabama. And as I talked to the owners of that collection, they had another idea as well, that he was painting from a advertisement for a chiropractor, which used to be on his mantle. So that may have been inspiration as well, kind of the X-ray component of this. But it's an early piece of his, and It's called Dry Bones Charley, which
yes.
was the theme of that character, which he kind of populated over and over again.
Yes.
But yeah, another landmark artist for Southern folk art and well known. Right here, this is a fun piece. We haven't talked too much about sculpture, and Jeanine knows more than I do.
Excuse me?
Dr. Charles Smith, again from Louisiana, just making incredible sculptures with stories to tell. I'm going to let you say more about Dr. Charles Smith.
Okay. Originally, I met Dr. Charles in Aurora, Illinois, and he created what we call environments, and lots of self-taught artists turn their entire yard and home outside into an environment artistically. And of course, they do it under their own urging, but then when people come to visit them, it's very gratifying. So Dr. Charles did the entire African diaspora in his yard, from a huge slave ship boat at the beginning, and as you walked around the yard, he ended with Michael Jackson. This happens to be a figure that he patterned after a piece in a plantation in Louisiana. And he said they always put these out by the road with lights in them. So that's his version. And he uses the tops of mops and just totally freeform concrete. There's no armature in here at all.
And Kohler has
Yes.
picked him up. Kohler is in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Mm-hmm.
So he is one of their artists that they support, and so his whole environment is being preserved.
Yes.
And the one piece you have I love is Emmett Till's mother,
Yes.
which is a very powerful piece. It's a bust of her head, large format, but very powerful. So glad you have that in the gallery.
We'll put that in another one of our films, but her eyes are just looking up like this, and she has such a steadfast gaze. It's very, very powerful. You know, we started doing all of this media because we've been closed because of the virus. And what has happened is you all have responded so well. I wrote in our newsletter sort of how I got here. And a big piece of that were the Florida Highwaymen, which I call our original Florida School of Art. And the Highwaymen were a group of Black artists from Fort Pierce. One of the artists, by the name of Alfred Hare, was tutored under a white artist, established artist named Beanie Backus. And he, in exchange for framing, would give him lessons on painting. And so as the story goes, Alfred Hare went to some of his schoolmates that had been good in art class, and they started painting Florida scenery and putting them in the trunks of their cars and going around, 50, 60, 1970s Florida to sell to professionals, lawyers' offices, doctors' offices, and so forth. Another reason why we've embraced them so much here in Florida is they really do record, the terrain of Florida. The Menorcans came over to settle St. Augustine, and they brought their Spanish masters, and so they did a lot of portraiture and things, but the Highwaymen did Florida scenes and got them right.
Everyone looks at a Highwayman painting and says, I've seen that scene before. I've seen that sunset. I've seen that beach scene. As we continue to grow in Florida, it's a wonderful history, and they did paint just kind of from memory. It's a wonderful history of where our state's natural beauty has gone and what we can still preserve, I think. I love this one particularly because it captures that 2 moments at sunset where you see a green patina. Really, it's only 2 minutes, but it's so special. And so this one's particularly dynamic, and you see the palette knife work in the clouds. But it's just a wonderful salute to everyone who loves Florida. Yeah.
So we're going to finish up with one more piece, and this is a piece that Charley purchased from my gallery, and so glad he did. He has an eye for just selecting the right piece because this piece has a lot of history. It's by Levon Williams, who we mentioned earlier. And I'm going to let Charley tell the story about the piece.
Well, it is a fun piece. It's unusual. And obviously it's kind of a cowboy raising a guitar up over his head. And we got to meet Levon at the gallery and talk to him about this piece. But it honors his uncle, who was, I want to say he was a rancher kind of in the Lakeland area.
He was a cowboy.
Yeah.
He ran cattle for a ranch owner. Yes.
So it's a great, and here you have cattle here, and his riding pants, or his chaps, so to speak. But it's also a tribute to a musician, and he said it's a tribute to, I think he said Sanford Thomas. So that's kind of fun because right here we have a clay piece by Sanford Thomas. He loved to work with clay, and in this case, it's one of his thematics. But a lot of Levon's family is still in Sanford, and when he was in the gallery for a talk, many of them were there. He's very unusual with his carving because his perspective, it's amazing how much he can move into a piece and make it work. Very powerful. I hope he's coming back to Sanford soon.
He is.
Okay.
We had him scheduled for a family reunion first week in July, but we're going to have to postpone that because of our COVID virus. But we'll let you know when we do put it back on the schedule. This one's called Boots in the Air, which I thought was interesting to it. And his father had a huge jazz record collection, and there was always great jazz playing in the home, he said, when he was a little boy. So that's his homage to the music that he grew up with.
But take a look at his other pieces that are available because the composition is just amazing. I don't know how he conceives of it with feet, hands, and musical instruments all kind of interwoven. They're very tight pieces, and they're certainly just wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for your attention, and Charley, thanks for being here with us. And,
Sure.
we just appreciate you and your collection and sharing it with us.
Pleasure. Thanks.